But we'll talk little Bengals here as we head into this matchup with the Eagles. It's a big one. I mean, right now, when you start out 0-3 and 1-4, I feel like every week we say, man, it's a big one. It doesn't even matter the caliber of opponent that you play at this point if you're Cincinnati. It's just about trying to dig yourself out of the hole that you dug yourself in to start the season, which they've done a good job the last couple weeks. It hasn't looked pretty. It was not a pretty win against the Giants. It was not a pretty win against Cleveland, but they all count the same. And at the end of the day, they're right back in the playoff conversation, something that you guys did not think was going to be the case at 0-3 and 1-4. But yet here we are. But this matchup with the Eagles fascinates me a little bit because I think when you look at the Eagles and the NFC, they're kind of very similar to Cincinnati. These are two teams with quarterbacks that were taken in the same draft who both led their teams to a Super Bowl. They did not win the Super Bowl, and they've been trying to get back ever since. And these are two quarterbacks that injuries have kind of banged them up since their Super Bowl appearances. And we know when healthy, these are two of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Jalen Hurts seems to be healthy now and playing some of his better football. Last year was not a good year. And then we know how good Joe Burrow is capable of being. Last couple weeks have been a little dicey. Still efficient, but not the explosive offense we're used to seeing from Joe Burrow and this Bengals offense. But this is really a big one for both teams because people are not buying into the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles still seem to be a team that they're not even being given credit in their own division while everyone's drooling over Washington right now. A win over Cincinnati will get them in the driver's seat in that division, or at least more respect in the NFC. And then a win over the Eagles for the Bengals obviously does wonders for the confidence moving forward. Because let's be real, every win so far, I've come into that studio with you guys, and it's like, we got to win. We didn't feel good about the win against Cleveland. We didn't feel good about the Giants win or the Carolina Panthers win. I made the joke, your list of wins looks like the draft order at this point. You got a good quality team in the Eagles coming to Cincinnati. Just missing the Patriots. No kidding. But no, with the Eagles coming up, a win over Philadelphia would be absolutely huge for the confidence of the fan base and this team, and it would honestly signify that the Bengals are officially back if they beat the Eagles on Sunday.
And that's absolutely right. That's, I think, what this game is for everyone. Obviously, it's important for the record when you start 1-4. Every game's important for the record. But this game's important because not only have the Bengals not won at home, but exactly like you just said, they haven't really beat a contender or anyone even close to being a contender. And the Eagles are certainly at least somewhat in that realm. We can argue whether or not they're actually a Super Bowl contender or not, but they certainly have big names on both sides of the ball that are going to make this game, a star-studded showdown, especially offensively for both squads with maybe the best two QB and wide receiver duos in the entire league. So we'll see what the Bengals are going to be able to do this weekend. It's a massive, massive test against a really good team that the Bengals, against every good team they've played so far, there have been massive shootouts. A 41-38 loss to the Ravens, a 38-33 loss to the Commanders, 26-25 to the Chiefs. Every contender the Bengals have played has been high-scoring games. And I think this week that's going to be the big test is can the defense hold up against these elite weapons?
I think the Eagles and the Bengals are very, very similar in the fact
Absolutely.
that both had very high expectations, both have elite offenses. And I think you're seeing a little bit of a disappointment. Eagles certainly have had a better season than the Bengals so far, and there's no doubt about it. But I think they're very similar. Like if you had a round robin, my round robin teams with the Bengals, the Eagles, maybe the Cowboys, you lump the Cowboys in there, and maybe one other middle of the road team that has high expectations but isn't completely living up to them. The Eagles this season, they're 17th in points scored per game. They're 9th in yards per game, 22nd in pass yards per game. Their time of possession ranked is 29th in the NFL. They're 23rd in third down efficiency, converting at 34%. They're just one of these teams that I think that should be a lot better, and they haven't been performing like that. Now, the one thing that the Eagles are very, very, very good at is running the football. They are second in the NFL in rushing. That's the area of concern for me, at least heading into Sunday. It's somehow you're going to have to bottle up Saquon Barkley. I watched – who did they play last week?
Giants.
They played the Giants last week. I think he had 5 40-yard rushes, 5 separate 40-yard rushes. That's how good that guy is. So I think if you're coming into Cincinnati on Sunday – I think the key is somehow find a way to stop him and force Jalen Hurts to throw the football. Jalen Hurts, when forced to throw the football, hasn't been a good quarterback. That's just at least so far this season. You have 2 elite wide receivers and a very, very good tight end. Dallas Goedert's a great tight end.
Hasn't practiced this week.
Has not practiced this week.
So he didn't play last week, looking like he's not going to play this week.
Okay, well, so that's great. That's phenomenal. So now you just have to worry about one less guy. I think Devontae Smith is very, very good. I think he was held for 1 catch for negative yards last week against the Giants. Obviously, they didn't really need to throw it. But saying all that, I think the Eagles and the Bengals are very similar teams. Bengals, in my opinion, have the edge. It's at home. You have to win a game at home eventually.
That's right.
You have to win a game at home. This is the game I think you do it. You upset the Eagles. I think, though the Bengals are favorites, according to Las Vegas, I do think I would favor the Eagles in my personal brain. I just think a guy like Saquon Barkley can just shred the Bengals at any moment. The good news is, again, though, the Bengals have been battling the clock, it seems like, more than opponents this season, and you're facing an Eagles team who doesn't hold on to the ball for very long.
Right.
That's the good news. That's the positives.
All right, this is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton. Again, the Cincinnati Bengals at home, 1 o'clock the kickoff. They are a 3-point favorite with the Philadelphia Eagles coming to town. We just talked about how big of a game this is. But again, with Jacob diving into the details of this game last night on Chatterbox Bengals, we'll do it here on Off the Bench as well. A little 3 and out. Jacob is going to give you 3 reasons why he feels good about the Bengals' chances against the Eagles on Sunday, but also 3 areas of concern. 3 and out. Jacob, take it from here.
The biggest advantage for the Bengals this week is Trey Hendrickson. And obviously that's a big-time advantage most weeks because he's one of the best edge rushers in all of football. But Jordan Mailata, the all-pro left tackle for the Eagles, is out. He was placed on IR a few weeks ago. So old Bengals friend Fred Johnson is going to be playing left tackle for the Eagles this week. If you remember Fred Johnson at all in Cincinnati, you know he's not exactly the best left tackle. So hopefully Trey Hendrickson's able to eat this week. I fully expect him to. And the other part of that equation is that Lane Johnson is the Eagles' right tackle. The best right tackle in football has been for many, many years. I don't expect Sam Hubbard to usually do a lot in the pass rush game. This week, he's going to be erased, probably at no fault of his own. So Trey Hendrickson's going to have to step up immensely on that left side and beat Fred Johnson, which I expect him to be able to do at a relatively consistent rate. On the other side of the ball for the Bengals offensively, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are going to be lined up across from 2 rookie corners. First-round pick, Quinyon Mitchell. Second-round pick, Cooper DeJean. Darius Slay, the normal Eagles number 1 corner, hasn't been himself this year, and the Eagles rookies have taken over the starting role. They've been very, very good since they've took over. Some of the best PFF coverage grades in football for DeJean since he moved into that full-time starting slot, but they haven't played wide receivers like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and to be honest, there's not a lot of wide receivers like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins in the league, and certainly not a lot of duos that have that much kind of power on the outside. So I would expect this to be a welcome to league moment for these 2 rookie corners. I think these wide receivers are going to have a big-time chance to dominate this game and really open it up on the offensive side of the ball for the Bengals. And when we get to concerns here in a second, you're going to see that goes both ways. Health is the final advantage I think is massive for the Bengals this weekend. We had 2 big-time scares this last week with Orlando Brown and Geno Stone both going down and not returning in the game. Geno Stone aircast, carted off, ended up miraculously being okay, both trending to play this week. Orlando Brown is going to be huge for the Bengals against the Eagles pass rush, which I'll touch on here in a second. But the Eagles lead the NFL in explosive plays. And last season, the Bengals were worst in the NFL at allowing explosive plays. So far this season, that trend has continued. Geno Stone, though he hasn't been phenomenal so far this year, that's exactly what he was brought in to prevent, were those explosive plays, to get some turnovers, get some big-time plays for the Bengals defense. He had his first pick in stripes last week before his injury. Having him back and healthy for this game, hopefully he's going to be able to play at a high level that we expected him to play at when we signed him in free agency and dial back those explosive plays for the Eagles offense. He's certainly our best chance to do so. And both of the Bengals linebackers are tied for 3rd in the NFL in tackles, Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson. They're going to have to bottle up Saquon Barkley because we know what he can do in the run game. And that takes me to our first concern is the run defense. These last 2 weeks, it's been much, much better than it was early in the season, but it was a massive worry for all Bengals fans going into this year and through the first few weeks of the season. Now that it's gotten a little bit better, we have a big-time test against Saquon Barkley this week, and obviously it is a healthy unit, which we haven't seen out there much. Hopefully it can change the tide from what we saw earlier this year, but we saw a Bengals team bottle up Derrick Henry for the entire game until overtime where he breaks a 50-yard run that gives him 95 yards in the game. You have to play for 4 quarters, and that's what it's going to take against Saquon Barkley. The Eagles can beat you in so many different ways, so trying to eliminate that run game is going to be crucial because I think, like you touched on earlier, the Bengals' key to success is making Jalen Hurts beat them with his arm, which is easier said than done because they have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith on the outside. The Bengals' secondary has been questionable at best this season after stepping it up the last 2 weeks against subpar offenses in the Giants and the Browns. One of the top, most loaded offenses in the entire NFL, at least on paper, comes to Cincinnati, and Cam Taylor-Britt versus A.J. Brown and D.J. Turner versus Devontae Smith, that's probably going to be the 2 matchups that decide this game. If the Eagles are able to move the ball with ease all day long, Jalen Hurts with time in the pocket going back to Trey Hendrickson, he's going to have to get pressure